Welcome to Orange Coast Unitarian Universalist Church on Zoom. We respectfully recognize that our church property rests on Ahachiman and Dangwa land. My name is Yulis Aiton, and I'm your worship associate today. I'm joined by Beth Syverson, our Director of Music Ministries, in welcoming you all. Today we are joined by Leah Morris, Amy Tompkins, and the Orange Coast Choir. Reverend Judy, our Director of Religious Education, already held classes for the children earlier this morning, and she will offer one for our youth after the service. I would like to invite you to open the chat box, and if you haven't already said hello this morning, we will be turning the chat off during the sermon portion of the service so as not to distract, but we will turn it on right afterwards. As Unitarian Universalists, we have many different beliefs, but we are one loving community. We are bound together not by a common set of rules or beliefs, but rather a covenant. A covenant is simply a promise that whatever our beliefs, we accept one another and encourage each other in spiritual growth. We affirm that all life has inherent value and that all existence is interconnected. We strive for justice and compassion in our deeds and relationships, and we are committed to creating a welcoming community without regard to the traits that sometimes divide people. I want to extend a special welcome to visitors. If you are seeking a spiritual home, we hope that you will find it here. After the service, we will be placing everyone who remains into Zoom breakout rooms for 20 minutes of coffee and conversation. Everyone is welcome to join in, and it's a great way to get to know people in the congregation. Our worship begins with the lighting of our chalice, a symbol of the Unitarian Universalist tradition, and as we light it, we say our unison affirmation. If you have a chalice or candle at home, we can light them together. Please join me now as we begin. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. This we affirm together.
Good morning. Let's start with this beautiful chant. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Sing it with me. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. One more time. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee.
When you arrive at the store and can't remember why, and you forgot the vet appointment and almost missed the dentist, even though they called you yesterday, and the bills are late and your kids need homework help and you're behind at work and haven't exercised in weeks. And you've been eating fast food while vegetables wilt in your fridge and your garden is turning into compost. And the one time you try to cook, you leave the granola in the toaster oven, setting the darn thing on fire. And you double book yourself again, and laundry forms mountains around your home, and you begin to look askance at your beloved because you haven't had fun together since you can't remember when. And then, just as you're starting to wonder about signs of dementia, you find yourself placing a metal spoon in the microwave and turning it on. Just breathe. Sometimes it takes a little craziness to get your attention. The prophet Elijah fled from 100 pursuers. He hunkered down in a cave on a wind-whipped mountainside, trembling through an earthquake and shield his face from a wildfire. He looked for God in the chaos. But when the storms blew over, when the shaking stilled and the flames died down, he crouched, panting and thinking he missed it, his heart pounding in his ears. But then he finally noticed the still, small voice. The holy waits in your world too. Maybe today it will find you in a listening posture and it will whisper to you. You tumble like a leaf, it will say, and yet by some miracle, you're still here. Now, what is the purpose of that?
Deep down in the belly of the night, dream deep winter dreams, and lie safe in your grandmother's arms, still as a seed, still as a seed. Deep down in the belly of the night, dream deep winter dreams, and lie safe in your grandmother's arms, still as a seed, still as a seed. Deep down in the belly of the night, deep down in the belly of the night, and lie safe deep in grandmother's arms, and lie safe as a seed, still as a seed. Deep down in the belly of the night, deep down in the belly of the night, and lie safe deep in the belly of the night, still as a seed, still as a seed, still as a seed, still as a seed.
Our reading this morning is a little longer than usual, but I thought it was it said it so well, I didn't think I could say it any better. So it begins like this. At times, perhaps without not quite knowing why, we become idle. In such states of mind, we're liable to be stigmatized by our own conscience as lazy. Laziness feels like a sin that bars us from living successfully or from thinking in any way well of ourselves. But to consider the matter from another perspective, it might be that the real threat to our happiness lies not in our failure to be busy, but in the very opposite scenario, in our inability to be lazy enough. Outwardly, idling may look to the world as if we're accomplishing nothing at all, but below the surface, a lot may be going on that's both important and in its own way very arduous. When we're busy with routines and administration, we're executing plans rather than reflecting on their value and ultimate purpose. But it is to the deeper, less accessible zones of our inner lives that we have to turn in order to understand the foundations of our problems and arrive at decisions that can govern our overall path. Yet these only emerge shyly and tentatively when we are feeling brave enough to distance ourselves from the immediate demands, when we can do so-called nothing all afternoon, while in fact wrestling with our most profound dilemmas. We need to distinguish between emotional and practical hard work. Someone who looks extremely active, whose diary is filled from morning till night, may appear the opposite of lazy, but secretly there may be a lot of avoidance going on beneath the outward frenzy. Busy people don't get around to working out their real feelings about their lives. Their busyness is in fact a subtle but powerful form of distraction. Our minds are in general a great deal readier to execute than to reflect. They can be rendered deeply uncomfortable by so-called large questions. What am I really trying to do? What do I actually enjoy? Who am I trying to please? What will I regret in a decade's time? The easy bit can be running around, but never pausing to ask why. Busyness can mask a vicious form of laziness. Our lives might be a lot more balanced if we were wise enough to allow for some afternoons of reflection. That there is courage in daring to sit at home with one's thoughts, risking encounters with anxiety or melancholy, but also highly necessary ideas. Without the shield of busyness, we might bump into the realization that our relationship has reached an impasse, that our work no longer answers to any higher purpose, or we feel furious with a family member. The heroically hard worker isn't necessarily the one in the business lounge of the international airport. It might be the person gazing without expression out the window. So, this morning, let's take a few moments to gaze out the window, to be lazy. I invite you to just take some deep breaths this morning. We're going to sit in a spirit of silence for 1 whole minute. It's going to feel like a lot longer than 1 minute. We're not going to have any music, just in silence, just you alone with your thoughts. And I invite you not to get up and get a glass of water or not go flipped over to the internet and read Reddit while everyone else is meditating, but just sit in that silence and be with your thoughts. And while you're there, I invite you to consider, are there any large questions that you're avoiding? Let us begin 1 minute of silence.
There is no roadmap for these times, but if you want to ease your mind, you gotta look inside. You gotta look inside. There is no roadmap for these days, but if you want to find some grace, you gotta look inside. You gotta look inside. You gotta look inside. You gotta look inside. I know your heart is crying, please, but if you want to find some peace, you gotta look inside. You gotta look inside. You gotta look inside. You gotta look inside. You look into the stars above, but you got all you need, and that is love. Look inside, you gotta look inside, you gotta look inside, you gotta look inside. Come on and look inside, you gotta look inside, come on and look inside.
So I'm curious, how many people here would like to be wiser and happier? Anybody? So maybe, okay, yeah. There we go, there are the hands, there we go. Because generally happiness and wisdom, they kind of go hand in hand, right? And I don't know if you know that, Oscar Wilde is often quoted as saying, with age comes wisdom. I don't know if you've heard that saying before, with age comes wisdom. And we who grow older every year, we find comfort in that saying. But what most people leave out is actually the second part of that quote. It's with age comes wisdom, but sometimes age comes alone. So yeah, I hate to break it to you, but age does not guarantee wisdom. All you have to do is think of some older people that don't ask wisely, maybe in your family or even in the political world, and ask yourself, are they wise? Maybe not. It's just a cold hard fact. Age does not guarantee wisdom, but there's some good news, is that there is a way to gain wisdom at any age. It's pretty simple, but it's very hard. You've got to be lazy. Okay, I always want to define what I mean by lazy, what we're talking about. I have to admit, it's not about binge watching Netflix, although you may need to do that for other reasons. But it's the kind of laziness that we're talking about in the reading, right? It's talking about, that means just doing nothing productive, but just being as part of your productivity. It's being comfortable with just being with the thoughts in your head, with yourself, and allowing what needs to come up, those big questions. Because that's the only way that we get answers, is to ask the questions. Now, these big questions that lead to wisdom and happiness, they require us often to sit in silence or be just alone with our thoughts. And what the reading doesn't really point out is that that's really uncomfortable for most of us. We don't want to go there, right? And I know that there's a number of meditators in our congregation, and you might think, oh, that's easy. I mean, I sit for 30 minutes alone every day in silent meditation. But I tell you, you add a tough question in there, one of those questions that maybe you've been avoiding asking yourself, I'm willing to bet that your monkey mind is starting to go, I want to think about anything else, and it jumps all over the place. I speak from experience. It's a universal truth. We don't want to be uncomfortable. And unfortunately, there's no shortcut to wisdom and happiness. Both are depending on our ability to reflect on our lives, to ask those deeper questions and find those deeper answers. So the first step to wisdom is getting comfortable with silence, or really with solitude. And I just want to say that being silent or in solitude is not the same as being lonely, and it's not the same thing as being alone. Being in silence or solitude can happen anywhere, really. It can happen at church, one of our services. It can be on a retreat. It can be when you're out walking and you've got cars zooming by you. We rarely get in full silence. One of my favorite places to be asking those big questions is in the car on a long drive, right? Or maybe on your commute or something like that. I used to do this all the time when I had this big commute where I lived in seminary. So I worked in Redmond, Washington. I went to seminary in Seattle, and the traffic was always so horrible to get there for my evening classes. So for about an hour to an hour and a half, I'd sit in traffic. And that's when I would just let my mind sort of rest on those questions, listening for answers. So being in solitude means being any place where we can hear ourselves think, where we're not distracting ourselves. Now, the second step to wisdom, if you can find that space in your life to be lazy, is to then tackle and ask those big questions of life, of purpose, of relationships, the whys of our lives. And I'm here to confess that that's really easy to do when you're in seminary because they make you write big papers on it. So you can't get out of it. You have to actually ask those big questions. But I'm here to tell you that if you feel like you're kind of unhappy or dissatisfied, I mean, barring medical depression, which is different, chances are you're not dealing with a big question that maybe needs to be answered. So figuring out what the question is, what you're avoiding, is kind of the next step. And it's not always easy. I mean, sometimes even just starting with, why am I feeling so discontent? Why am I unhappy? I don't understand. That's a good place to start. Now, the third step is to make sure that you're listening to the right voice when you're listening for the answers, okay? The still, small voice. That's the purpose of getting rid of all your distractions and going into silence. We need that solitude because the still, small voice within, as our reading says, it's very, very quiet. It's tentative and shy. We have to listen very closely above the din of our monkey mind going everywhere, jumping around all over the place in order to hear it. But what exactly are we listening for? How do we hear it? Well, I want to give you a second reading today. It touches upon what that might be. Beneath the hustle and the bustle. Our second reading is as follows. Beneath the hustle and bustle, beneath the stream of thoughts that clamors and chatters, over the landscape of our interior world, beneath our habits of momentum and stirring, there is a stillness, deep and peaceful, the place where creation begins. Who lives there? We know her by many names: truth, love, God, wisdom. We turn our hearts toward her face, toward the mystery, and bring our prayers of awe, of longing, of hope, of exhaustion. And she holds us in our grief and anger, in our disappointment, our loneliness, and our rebirth. From her viewpoint, she sees us, children of the stillness, children of love. She sees our place in the order of things joined together in the larger story. And she invites us again and again into living, invites us into loving, invites us into being loved. Wouldn't it be cool if you could tap into that? And we can. So this morning, I want you to listen for that still small voice inside. Some of you may be familiar with it, and some it may be really new to you, like, what is she talking about? I don't know. But let me give you a little preview for those of you who might be a little bit new at this, because we're going to do 2 minutes of silence this time, 2 whole minutes. And during that time, you might notice how many voices you have going on inside your head. Okay? Now, I've done a number of meditating over the years, and I can usually find there's about 3 or 4 of them going on, but 3 main ones. And the first one is, of course, our sort of conscious voice, our conscious thoughts, like, okay, I'm sitting here. Is anybody looking at me? I'm supposed to do, okay, what am I supposed to do now? Oh, that's right, I'm supposed to listen to some voices. So that's the conscious, right, voice. And the second, you might have a voice muttering underneath if you listen for it. And oftentimes my voice is kind of mean. It'll say things like, man, this is stupid. You got other things to be doing. Oh, you suck at this. It's kind of annoying. And this is the voice you really need to ignore, okay? And then the third, maybe it's way underneath. Oftentimes it's more of a feeling that you get more than anything, you might hear something really different or feel it. Something sort of warm and soft and inviting. That's the voice or the feeling that you want to nudge forward out of the din of the other voices. You could call that voice anything you want: truth, love, God, spirit, you. But just see if you can hear it. Don't try to define it. Just see if you can hear it. So let's soften our eyes. Again, take some deep breaths. And for 2 minutes, see if you can hear that voice deep down inside inviting you.
I'm listening. I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. I'm listening. I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. My ears are wide open. My eyes are now open to see what I may be. I'm listening. I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. I'm listening. I am listening. In this moment of Spirit, speak through me. I can hear the voices of all my kind. I'm listening, singing. I am listening, this tweeting and howling into the wind. My ears are wide open, and oh, the joy. My eyes are wide open, oh, the love to see that's here for you and me. Oh, I'm listening in this moment of silence. I am I'm listening. I hear it speak through me.
So I mentioned one of the things that I loved about my seminary is that they taught us a lot about how to do this. We had days we actually had to do reflection retreats, how to reflect on our lives, to find meaning in the everyday. And here's the thing that I figured out is that you actually have to be taught how to do this. It isn't something that we all just know how to do. In fact, I had this friend in seminary, I'll call her Tanya because I don't want to say her real name, but she was a nun, okay, a nun. And one day she came to me and told me she was really struggling with the class. She wasn't getting good grades on her papers and she asked me to help her. And when I read her work, I realized that she was really good at putting down the facts, but not good at understanding the meaning behind them or how to apply them. So for example, in reflecting on a scripture passage, she could say what it said and even parrot what other people said about the meaning of it, but she didn't know how to apply it to her own life. And she was a nun. That's what we do with wisdom when we can apply it to our own lives. That's reflection. It's finding meaning. Because that's when it kind of hit me. It was like, wow, not everybody knows all this stuff. It's sort of the irony of a nun not knowing how to reflect on her life. It's kind of a big deal. But I know that many of you do have this skill, but for those of you who don't, who've never really been taught this, it's sort of like listening in general, right? We think we know how to listen because we've got ears and we hear things, but learning to listen to people without our own thoughts jumping in and us interrupting them or trying to fix them, like there's a skill to listening. It's the same thing with reflection. There's a skill to it. And most of us are pretty familiar with our conscious thoughts, right? Maybe even some of our unconscious thoughts and reactions. We know those when those are coming up. But many of us, for example, we get some thoughts or feelings mixed up. For example, intuition and instinct. These are two very different things. They come from different places in our brains, in fact. So instinct comes from that primal or primitive brain. It's actually in the brain stem down in there. And every animal has this. It controls our survival and our drives. So it's that freeze, fight, or flight response, right? It's also what makes us want to run from those big questions that we're avoiding, because anything that causes us fear or anxiety, chances are the primitive brain or instincts want to be in charge. It isn't always a bad thing to have your instincts in charge. If a car is coming at you, I hope that primitive brain will kick in and get you out of the way. It can be a good thing, but it's not always the best thing to be in control of you. And intuition, on the other hand, comes from more of our modern brain. It's a mixture of emotions and subconscious thoughts, which reside in the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. Now, sometimes say that about 90% of our brain is devoted to the subconscious, but most of the time we're just completely unaware of what our subconscious is doing. 90% of our brain, think about that. Now, intuition has also its positive and negatives. Intuition is that ability to know something without analytical reasoning, without the prefrontal cortex. This is why it's a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious thoughts, right? So for example, Einstein knew about the theory of relativity before he could prove it. He just knew intuitively that there was something there. And while intuition can come close to what we're talking about in the still small voice, often our intuition is influenced by our past experiences, what we do know, not necessarily what we don't know. If those experiences were not good ones, intuition turns into instinct as well, which can cause problems. But neither instinct nor intuition are really what I'm talking about when it comes to listening to that still small voice within. So what is that still small voice within that Elijah had to hear in all of his chaos and of all of our chaos that we can hear? Some people do call it God. That's certainly what the Christian mystics call it. The Hindus call it the Atman. Modern psychology calls it the authentic self. I've heard it called wisdom, the best self, Holy Spirit. But for me, I don't know, to me, all of that is all of the same thing. My favorite name for that still small voice is the true self. I think that may be borrowed from Buddhism, but don't quote me on that. And I like the true self because I think it's something that it's at the core of who we are. Now, what modern psychologists have learned is that there's a deep part within every person that shares certain characteristics. That if the person can access that part of themselves, they can find an incredible wisdom there. That's what psychotherapy is about, is helping people find their own wisdom. So how do you know what that part is? What does it look like? Well, they've actually come up with 7 characteristics of what the true self is, a state of being. And it's all alliterated with the letter C. It's being calm. It's when you're calm, when you're curious, connected, compassionate, confident, courageous, and clear. Or one way of putting it, that Brene Brown, I love it, she just calls it being wholehearted. Being wholehearted. Calm, curious, connected, compassionate, confident, courageous, and clear. And it's when we're in this wholehearted state, that's when we need to ask those big questions, when we're just open to it. Because that's when we can hear the still small voice with the answers to our questions. We can hear what we need to hear, not what we want to hear. So I want to try another meditation. This is a short meditation, not a lot of silence. I'm going to take you through this. It's not going to be that hard. It'll be kind of fun. So I invite you again to take some deep breaths and imagine a time, or just simply imagine yourself now. Imagine yourself calm, just at ease and calm. So you're breathing in, you're getting more calm. And add to that being curious, open, inviting. Then if you can, reach out with that heart space. And do you feel yourself connected to people here, to people in your family, ones you love? And with that sense of connection, can you feel compassion? Maybe you know some hard things that they're going through. You can feel some compassion and love toward them. Man, it feels so good to be in this state. You feel confident, like, yeah, I know this place. I don't visit it all that often, maybe, but I know this place. Feel confident. Maybe you feel like you could just do about anything. You feel courageous. Oh, your best self, your true self. Here, you have no fear. You're calm and courageous and compassionate and confident, connected, and everything feels clear, soft and open, inviting, clear. Can you feel yourself in this open-hearted, wholehearted state? Feel your heart kind of slowing down. Maybe your breath is getting deeper. If you feel that courage, I invite you, if there is a question that you're avoiding, to bring it up and see if you can maintain that state as that question is being asked, and if any answers might come up. Let's just pause a moment in silence to see if you can hear or feel any response. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to us here. You see, I believe that you all have all the answers, all what you need inside of you. You don't need anyone else to give you the answers. You are wise and courageous and beautiful and loved, and you're powerful. Now, it might take some practice to stay in that state. It's not one that we can always stay in every moment in our lives, but to learn to be in that state is the path to wisdom and happiness. To learn to even to react from that place in our lives. But if you ever find yourself struggling with an answer to a big question, you can't find your true self deep within you, just bring that forward. Think of those 7 C's: calm, courageous, compassionate, clear, connected. Just get to that place and see if you can get there, and it won't steer you wrong. And if you're wondering, what the heck is Reverend Sean talking about? I didn't hear anything. Hold on. You still have this deep inside of you all of the time, whether or not you accessed it today. Maybe you just use a different method. These 3 steps are what I use. But here's the thing. I know you have this inside you. You may not know it, but I do. Because I've told you this before. I have this gift that I see it in people. Seriously, I consider it my gift. Some of you I know share this gift with me. Every person here that I have ever met in this church, I have seen it. In fact, it's in the vast majority of people. They have this power inside of them. And sometimes we call it that still small voice when we're listening to it, for it. But other times we call it their light because they seem to shine with that wholeheartedness. And other times, maybe it's just being in their presence. It just makes you feel better being with them. It's my gift that I get to see this in people. And I don't just hear the still small voice within me. I see the light of people's true self. And let me tell you something. You all blow me away. If you could see what I could see, you are beautiful beyond measure and more powerful than you know. If you only could see it, if you could hear what I hear, that's my invitation for you. May your ears be wide open. May your eyes be now open to see what you may be. Amen. Blessed be, and let us sing.
We've got the power, alleluia. 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 We've got the power, hallelujah. 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 We've got the power, hallelujah.
Unitarian Universalist congregations are fully self-supporting, meaning that members and friends raise all funds for the operating budget, ministries, and programs for the church. We are ever grateful for your gifts of time, treasure, and talent. OCUUC amplifies that spirit of generosity by sharing half of the plate we receive with an organization that shares our values. This month, we are supporting American Family Housing. American Family Housing's programs have the overall goal of providing families and individuals with tools they need to secure a stable home, become an active part of their community, and to achieve a fulfilling life. Visit afhusa.org to find out more about AFH. There are now 3 ways in which you can give online. The first is through our website, www.ocuuc.org. The second through an app called Give. You can download it on the App Store for your smartphone, and once set up, you can use it for any of your online giving, including your pledge. The third method is by texting 714-942-1131. Simply text to that number and in a message type the amount. As always, thank you for your generosity as the offering is given and received.
Amber called her uncle, said we're up here for the holidays. Jane and I were having solstice now, we need a place to stay. And her Christ-loving uncle watched his wife hang Mary on the tree. He watched his son hang candy canes all made with red dye number 3. He told his niece it's Christmas Eve, I know our life is not your style. She said Christmas is like solstice and we miss you and it's been a while. So the Christians and the pagans sat together at the table, finding faith and common ground the best that they were able. And just before the meal was served, hands were held and prayers were said, sending hope for peace on earth to all their gods and goddesses. The food was great, the tree plugged in, the meal had gone without a hitch, till Timmy turned to Amber and said, is it true that you're a witch? His mom jumped up and said, the pies are burning, and she hit the kitchen, and it was Jane who spoke. She said, it's true, your cousin's not a Christian, but we love trees, we love the snow, the friends we have, the world we share. You find magic in your God, we find magic everywhere. So the Christians and the pagans sat together at the table, finding faith and common ground the best that they were able. Where does magic come from? I think magic's in the learning. Now when Christians sit with pagans, only pumpkin pies are burning. When Amber tried to do the dishes, her aunt said, really, no, don't bother. Amber's uncle saw how Amber looked like Tim and like her father. He thought about his brother, how they hadn't spoken in a year. He thought he'd call him up and say, it's Christmas and your daughter's here. He thought of other sons and brothers, saw his own son tug his sleeve, saying, can I be a pagan? Dad said, we'll discuss it when they leave. So the Christians and the pagans sat together at the table, finding faith and common ground the best that they were able, lighting trees in darkness, learning new ways from the old, making sense of history and drawing warmth out of the cold.
Please join in singing We Gather Together, a song that puts our intentions into words and expresses our gratitude for the many gifts we share.
We gather together, we gather as one, for peace, love, and justice for everyone. We give from our hearts to
thank you all for being here with me today. Now is that time when we honor important events and people in our lives, and everyone is welcome, invited to join, whether you're a member, a friend, a visitor, and we're to participate in this weekly ritual that we call Joys and Sorrows. And the idea is that if you've come here holding something in your heart, some profound joy or sorrow, and you'd like to honor that, we invite you to light a candle to do so. And if you'd like to share it with the congregation, you can write that joy or sorrow in the chat. So let's just take a few moments in contemplation as Beth plays some music, and then I'll begin reading joys and sorrows out loud. And please forgive me if I miss one, and you all can help me by waiting to type comments to an express joy or sorrow until we're done. I love the impulse, but it's hard with everything scrolling really quickly. Elizabeth enjoying a 2-week break from distance learning. Bless her heart. Yay, happy winter break to all, she says, students and educators. Yes. And Linda has a joy, says happy 36th birthday to one of our amazing grandsons, Alex, who's been dealing with very serious health challenges for over a year. He's a true warrior. We wish him well. And Jolynn has a joy that Chance, her son, his horrible first semester of virtual learning in the new world of 7th grade is over, starting with a clean slate in January. He's got a grip on it now. Go Chance. Yes. And Maureen has lit a candle for her daughters who flew yesterday from Stockholm to Phoenix and from Estonia to Scotland. And they're just a little bit worried about them. Yeah. Not a good time to be traveling, is it? Oh. And Sunny has lit a candle for son-in-law, announced on Zoom last night that he's just been hired on a new job and doesn't have to move. So yay, excellent. And Sarah Jones, our administrator, she is a candle of gratitude, a joy for all the caring thoughts and healing energy sent this past weekend. Says it was much appreciated. Ulysses has lit a candle of joy that the pandemic is over. However, a candle of concern that people might forget to keep vigilance before they get the vaccine. So I hope you're absolutely right. That's our prayer. Yes. And Ken says he's thankful for this church, the home run service today. Oh, thank you. And you're very welcome. Yes, Beth and the team are awesome. And yes, thank you for pointing that out, Ken. We have a stunning new website if you want to go check it out. It's really cool. So, and Denny and Bob Melvu, yes, oh, I have a deep sorrow for their caregiver of 4 years has gotten COVID, is out sick. But the joy is that Bob and Denny have tested negative, and we hope it stays that way. So yes. And I have one wonderful celebration I'd also like to lift up. I don't know if you all are aware that Tom Lockery and Nancy Lockery joined Orange Coast 40 years ago this last week. And so they're lighting a candle of joy because time really does fly, and they want to say thank you all for your friendship. So I just can't believe 40 years, you guys are amazing. I'm gobsmacked. I'm trying to think if I've done anything for 40 years. That is just unbelievable. Thank you all. You've been such a wonderful and amazing influence on this congregation, and all for the better. You are both so deeply, deeply loved. And Sunny wants to offer a wonderful ceremony. We had our winter solstice singing ritual last night. We had a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful service. So thank you for lifting that up as well. And Ava and Cosme are offering that their son Danton is having a small celebration for having gotten their marriage certificate. They wanted 2020 to be the year of their wedding, but next year, when we're out of COVID, they're going to have their big wedding. So congratulations, at least getting the marriage certificate, and we'll get to the big wedding. So, and Lisa has a joy for our Share the Plate. They're celebrating their grand opening of Della Rosa in Westminster. And you can check out their YouTube as well. Let's show them love. They're a wonderful organization to support. And Maria Pedersen has a joy. She says her cousin and her fiance in Wisconsin turned in for the Solstice ceremony last night, and they said they loved it. That's wonderful, Maria. I'm so glad they enjoyed it. We have people from all over the country there, including many of the composers. Yes. And Alex is excited because Rika is going to be ordained. For those of you who don't know Rika is our intern, and yes, she's going to be ordained. And the date is January 23rd. She's being ordained by us. So we get to be the lucky people who get to ordain her. We're going to be doing an online ordination. I'll tell more about that later. That is a joy. All right. Well, let's hold and love all the joys and celebrations, all the hurts and sadness, both spoken and silent. Let our joys remind us to be thankful. Our concerns remind us to hope. And all of this, let all of these moments remind us that we're not alone. I invite you to join me in a spirit of prayer. It's written by Rob Bell, who was an evangelical and became a universalist. He writes this: walk, don't run. That's it. Walk, don't run. Slow down, breathe deeply, and open your eyes, because there's a whole world right here within this one. The bush doesn't suddenly catch on fire. It's been burning the whole time. Moses is simply moving slowly enough to see it, and when he does, he takes off his sandals, not because the ground has suddenly become holy, but because he's just now become aware that the ground has been holy the whole time. Efficiency is not God's highest goal for your life. Neither is busyness, or how many things you can get done in one day, or speed, or even success, but walking, which leads to seeing. Now that's something. That's the invitation for every one of us today and every day, in every conversation, interaction, event, and moment, to walk, not run. And in doing so, to see the whole world right here within this one. Amen.
Let us join together as we extinguish the flame of our chalice and say together, we extinguish our chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. This we carry in our hearts until we are together again. We are a congregation made up of people who all believe differently. And yet, when we gather together, virtually or otherwise, we make up one loving community. We need not think alike to love alike. If you are a guest, a visitor, or someone who hasn't yet been known to us, I invite you to become part of this beloved community, even if just for today. We encourage you to write in the chat your name and where you are from. If you would like to know more about our church, please see our church website for ways you can get involved and sign up for our weekly email called The Blast at blast@ocuuc.org. If you would like to know more about membership, please contact us at membership@ocuuc.org. If you would like to find more info about how to join the programs for children and youth, please contact Reverend Judy at revjudy@ocuuc.org. Our community is enriched by its visitors, guests, and friends, and we hope that they find a spiritual home here. We want everyone to feel a part of this beloved community. So please reach out and we will help you get connected. After the benediction, We will have a short period where everyone can wave and say hello. Then those that remain will be put into Zoom breakout groups for 20 minutes or so if you choose. We invite you to check in and get to know the people in your group and welcome any visitors. And now Reverend Sean has some announcements.
All right, you can see lots of fun things coming up, and even today we've got going on. I want to say we've got a Christmas Eve service. If you've never been to it, maybe you don't do Christmas Eve service or whatever, come to this one, it'll be kind of fun. It's going to be really fun, actually, even with kids there, because I'm actually learning to animate some stories. Yes, it's going to be a lot of fun with lots of good song and some fun stories and all sorts of great things. And I also want to remind you to save the date. We've got Rika Koppel, our intern for 2 years, is going to be ordained by us on January 23rd. That's a Saturday at 2:30. I'll be reminding you, but you might want to put it on your calendar. And then also we have on January 31st, we're going to have a town hall meeting after church about the new sanctuary, which we're looking to build. So to answer questions and get you up to speed as to what's going on and everything. So put that also on there. Also on that day, we're going to be doing a new member ceremony. So if you're interested in membership, contact me or membership@ocuc.org and we'll get you connected to that. So it's a lovely little ceremony that we do as part of the service. So, and also I just want to remind you also that the staff are on holiday between Christmas and New Year's Day. Obviously we're around if there's an emergency, but emergencies, please, that would be great. So let us sing our benediction.
Be safe, be well, you mean the world to me. Be safe, be well, you mean the world to me.
And if I don't see you on Christmas Eve, have a wonderful holiday, everyone. And remember, be lazy. Your minister has told you to be lazy. This service is over. Let our service continue.